What's good, everyone? I hope everyone's week is going alright. This week's video is on when boxers fly too close to the sun. Pretty much notable fighters who bit more than they can chew or didn't walk away while they were ahead to explore something better to add on to their career, or just retired entirely. With that being said, let's start the video. In spring 2003, Roy Jones Jr. was on top of the world. The light heavyweight champion, now the new WBA heavyweight title holder, had a lot of options. Since he was pound for pound number one, it didn't matter what he did, a crowd will follow his next move. There were talks at heavyweight of Roy to fight Lennox Lewis, and most notably Mike Tyson, who Jay Prince was responsible of trying to set up. Tyson was secretly having meetings with HBO and Top Rank where he was on the verge of securing a $80 million fight deal once he finished his Showtime contract up that following year. Roy Jones, who barely made the heavyweight limit on fight day, could have very well started a conquest to becoming undisputed at cruiserweight, as it was free real estate. Due to his pound for pound status, could have very well had all these fights in his backyard of America. These title holders were WBA champion Jean-Marc Mormec from France, WBO champ Johnny Nelson from the UK, and WBC champion Wayne Braithwaite, who fought in the States. And lastly, the IBF was held by James Toney, but he vacated it, so that was left for anyone ranked to take. Instead of taking cruiserweight by storm, Roy loses all that solid muscle to move back down to light heavyweight to defend his empire. This would come at a price, as a drained Roy would barely win to beat Tarver, then for him to lose it all in the rematch. Then for good, months later, against Glenn Johnson in efforts to reclaim a portion of his power in the weight class.
He's not going to get up, and he's been knocked out again.
Will we ever see Roy Jones in the ring again?
Not the one we are used to seeing, because we didn't.
Forced to fight outside of her home country of Norway, as it was illegal for women to box, Cecilia found her new home in Germany. She rose through the ranks and became the WBC and WBA welterweight champion. Due to her success, the laws were changed and she was allowed to finally have a homecoming title fight in her country of Norway. Then after 15 title defenses in 2014, Cecilia would become the first official 4-belt undisputed champion in the 4-belt era. To clarify, yes, Hopkins had all those belts. However, the 3-belt era did not officially end till the end of 2006, when the WBO was recognized by all belt organizations. So the last undisputed champions prior to the change coming to 2007 was welterweight Zab Judah and cruiserweight O'Neal Bell. Bell being the final undisputed champion to end that era. Cecilia would go on a hell of a streak with 10 straight defenses as the undisputed champion, totaling 25 consecutive title defenses. Keep in mind, Cecilia's first title fight was for the unified title. Her record was 36-0 and now tied for the great Joe Louis's consecutive title defense record. At possibly the worst time to have a fight, the now 39-year-old was set to face Jessica McCaskill in her backyard of America. Cecilia, now visibly showing her age, would get out-hustled by the prime contender. Jessica would score the massive upset to become the welterweight champion, ending Cecilia's historic streak by majority decision. There would be an immediate rematch, and Cecilia would pretty much get shut out on the scorecards to lose once more. Really, this story should come to an end. However, Cecilia will go on to fight once a year from 2022 to 2024. October of 2025, Cecilia would get, I would say, a retirement title shot in her home country of Norway for the WBC and WBO junior middleweight titles against the 24-1 Emma Kozin. The now 44-year-old would turn back the clock and regain the title by unanimous decision, possibly the only person on the list that lost everything and somehow managed to end their career on a good note at the top of the game. Before we get back with the video, be sure to hit that like button. YouTube has been frying this page's reach, so if you enjoy the content, this is the best way to show your support, which I greatly appreciate. The comment section topic is, what network/boxing promotion has put on the best and most meaningful matchups this decade from 2020 to present day of 2025, and why? Leave in the comments. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and let's get back to the video. Coming into 2004, Shane Mosley had rebounded from losing the welterweight title to become the WBC, WBA, and Ring Junior Middleweight champ, defeating Oscar De La Hoya in their rematch. This put Mosley back in the top 3 pound for pound, and Mosley was now in line to face Tito Trinidad in a super fight. A lot of money on the line for Mosley to make, as both are the most popular faces in boxing among hardcore and casual audiences. Mosley gambled on this done deal of a matchup by going ahead and fighting IBF champion Winky Wright to become undisputed, where Mosley would be entitled to a far larger purse. This gamble failed, and Mosley would lose by unanimous decision. There would be an immediate rematch, and Mosley would lose once more, which completely derailed his super fight with Tito Trinidad and a potential third fight with Oscar. Hopkins would become the IBF champion in '95, followed up to becoming undisputed in 2001. By 2005, he surpassed Carlos Monzon for the most title defenses at middleweight. As now #1 pound for pound, Hopkins had some options. He could move up to light heavyweight and fight Antonio Tarver for the title, or pursue Joe Louis's title defense record. Hopkins decided to remain as a champion, and in his 21st title defense, he would challenge mandatory and undefeated young talent Jermaine Taylor. After a slow rocky start, Hopkins would rally too little too soon to lose the middleweight title by split decision. He would then lose the rematch. After 2 straight losses, Hopkins would pursue to fight the light heavyweight champ, Antonio Tarver. Hopkins would win by a wide unanimous decision to prove that he should have made that move up to light heavyweight after the Howard Eastman fight. Coming into 2021, Canelo Alvarez was on top of the world pound for pound and was the undisputed super middleweight champion. I think that he personally thought his first run at light heavyweight for the title was a big asterisk. This fight was made last minute due to a failed fight deal for a September matchup, possibly for undisputed at middleweight, and Kovalev had just picked up the WBO after a incredibly hard and damaging fight that required a much longer break. This was politically one of the best options at a last minute. Dmitry Bivol was undisputably the best in the weight class outside of Berberev. If you followed the division coming to the 2017s, this man was highly touted as the next big thing at light heavyweight. However, despite the skills being there, he lacked the audience. Canelo had so many options, but he chose Dmitry, a real in his prime light heavyweight. Canelo coming in thinking this would be like the Kovalev fight, as the two had similar styles. But the difference is Bivol is much faster and he has much better stamina coming into the final 4 rounds, unlike Kovalev. The Kovalev fight, it was incredibly close, leading to him hitting the wall in the 11th round. Bivol didn't slow down. In fact, picked it up, which Canelo did not expect. This resulted in Canelo's first loss since the Mayweather fight in 2013. It propelled Bivol to a status he should have already been at, and Canelo now no longer the pound for pound king of the sport. Coming into the summer of 2007, Ricky Hatton was on top of the world and broke into the mainstream in America after his big win against Jose Luis Castillo to go 43-0. Hatton was in an amazing position. He could either go fight Floyd Mayweather at 147, risking his undefeated record, or unify against rising UK star and rival WBC champion Junior Witter, who had a massive 2-year run defeating Lovemore Endo, Andreas Kotelnik, Colin Lines, DeMarcus Corley for the title, then 2 straight TKO victories against Arturo Moroa and Vivian Harris, which set shockwaves through the 140-pound weight class.
Will he get up from that? Vivian Harris in the 7th round. I'm not sure he can. This is going to be the night for Junior Witter, who sends a stunning statement around world boxing.
Hatton and Witter have history with each other. Before they became champs, were now primed for a mega fight that would easily fill up Wembley.
Do you deserve a shot at him now?
Most definitely. Do you think you can beat me?
What? I didn't hear you. Can you speak up? Am I going to give you a shot?
I said, do you think you can beat me?
Do I think I know I can beat you. I know I can beat you. I've got 4 belts here, but a few more performances like that and you're bringing a bit more to the table.
However, Hatton would move up to 147 and take the gamble to face Floyd in Vegas. Hatton would come up unsuccessful, getting stopped in the 10th round.
He's been stride for stride throughout the career.
Check left hook. A check left hook went right into it. You never saw it.
What a perfect shot. The left hook.
Every situation for Hatton.
This fight is over. Floyd Mayweather has a knockout victory over Ricky Hatton.
Any chances of a unification happening in 2008 to put Hatton back on the map was shut down, as Witter will lose in a massive upset defeat against the unknown Tim Bradley by split decision. Adonis Stevenson is really on this list for the wrong reasons, and it wasn't for attempting to be great or optimize / leverage deals and revenue. Stevenson and his team, with possibly a little help by the organization itself, exploited the system to where he did not face a mandatory opponent for 5 years straight. Corruption at its finest. Coming into 2018, Stevenson is only fighting once a year for the past 2 years straight. WBC was already in the works of creating one of the most controversial titles in boxing history, the franchise title. This would be fully coming to effect summer of 2019. The WBC franchise title gets rid of the responsibility of facing mandatory opponents, a heavily flawed feature as it can be easily exploited. If Stevenson can get past this calendar year of 2018, as he's only required to make 1 title defense, he will be at the top of that list to be named franchise champion, given on paper how long he has reigned and the fact that he sells a lot in Canada. However, coming to the back half of 2018, there was a problem. 2018 would mark the transitional period of the weight class. Guys like Bivol, Berbayev, and Alexander can freely move up the ranks without being gatekept. Alexander would become the WBC interim champion early that year, making him the mandatory challenger. Alexander has an Olympic medal backed by Top Rank and other big figures. There is no way Stevenson can pay Alexander to step aside, like what he was doing with Eleider Alvarez, who coincidentally was a part of the same stable as Stevenson. The WBC has their hands tied, and this fight had to happen or Stevenson will be stripped. Now, if the WBC franchise title was implemented in 2018 rather than 2019, Stevenson could have reached out the minute he felt pressure. He could have been made franchise champion, where he no longer has to face Alexander and go on as usual, clogging and mucking up the progression of the weight class even further, while Alexander fights for a dummy vacant WBC title against number 2 or whoever is available. This isn't just a projected scenario. This actually happened. Sirsuket Sorungvisai, who was the WBC mandatory, stepped aside for Estrada to face Gonzalez for a second fight. This was for the good of boxing, and he made the honorable decision to do so because this was a highly anticipated rematch that was many years in the making. There was already a third fight in talks, and Rungvisai wanted his third fight with Estrada and did not want to step aside again, which is more than reasonable. After calling out the WBC and Estrada online, the WBC made Estrada franchise champ, where he no longer had to worry about fighting Rungvisai ever again. The fight between Alexander and Stevenson is set for December 2018, exactly 5 years and a couple days from his last mandatory title defense. Despite a spirited effort from Stevenson, the Canadian ref Michael Griffin, who at this point has an outstanding reputation, was acting out of character. When the fight was over, Stevenson is out on his feet and the fight needed to be stopped. He let the fight go on and Stevenson gets brutally put away. I like to note that prior to the 11th round stoppage, Stevenson was up on 2 out of the 3 judges' scorecards. One judge grossly scored it 98-92, so the fix was in to keep Stevenson as the champ if he were to remain up. Stevenson would be rushed to the hospital and fall into a coma, which due to the injuries, he was forced to retire from boxing after waking up and being rehabilitated. This could have been all avoided if the WBC didn't enable this, and actually enforce their rules, or if Michael Griffin didn't step out of character and stop the fight when it should have been stopped, because this is not his first rodeo in these type of fights. He did a world-class job with David Lemieux versus Golovkin, Yayagashi versus Gonzalez, and saved both fighters' careers. This was really out of character. At the end of 1951, Robinson would reclaim the middleweight title against Randy Turpin after being dethroned by him towards the end of Robinson's 50-day, 7-fight European tour, ending his historic win streak. Robinson proved in the rematch that he was ill-prepared due to a lot of partying in between fights. After 2 defenses of the middleweight title, he would announce his retirement from the sport with the record of 132, 2, and 2 draws. Incredibly legendary record. However, Robinson was quickly bit by the bug to return back to boxing, the itch to come back, as well as other reasons. Robinson was offered to fight Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight title for June 23rd. Due to rain, as it was held in an outside venue at Yankee Stadium, the fight had to be pushed back to the 25th. The 1950s in America was known for its severe heat waves and hot temperatures. Due to incredibly bad timing, the new date for this fight would be in the middle of a historic heat wave in New York, which temperatures reached around 103 degrees at night. The fight should have been postponed there, however, since there's no rain, the show must go on. Robinson dominated the fight, but the heat in the ring was so intense due to the lights, which made the temperature above 105 degrees. Robinson's body was slowly giving out on him despite the massive lead. It was so hot in the ring that the ref had to be swapped out for a new ref after the 10th round. Coming into the 14th round, all 3 judges had him up by 7 rounds at the highest and 4 at the lowest. Robinson was 6 minutes away from becoming the light heavyweight champion and making history. However, his body gave out, resulting in a heat stroke. He was forced to retire from his stool. Robinson's body was covered in blisters. His body could not retain fluids properly, which left him delirious. It took Robinson a total 6 months to recover from the fight, which he would announce his retirement December of that year, marking the end of this peak form of Robinson. He would come back 3 years later, lose his comeback, but find a portion of his form later on to recapture the middleweight title.
Knocking out Bobo Olsen and regaining the title, Ray felt vindicated. The newspaper guys didn't think he would win. Nobody thought he could win. So on the way back to the dressing room, Ray Robinson, who was always in control of his emotions, actually broke down and cried.
And on top of that, this is when boxers fly too close to the sun. For more installments, be sure to like, share, and if you're new, subscribe. Subscribe to the Patreon for Patreon-backed projects and early access. I'm Mofa Sancho, and I'm out.